populates.
You saying it's got to populate us since we was already on?
Well, I'm checking Facebook now to see if we're live. So give me a second. Or you guys could go up there too.
I'm checking Facebook. So Nancy, let's talk about it with Alice live. Yes.
Okay, we're good to go now. Yep,
All
we're
right. This is Let's Talk About It with Alice. We are live. Good evening, good evening, good evening. We invite everyone to Let's Talk About It with the Alice. We have tonight on is Terry. Terry's
Hey.
on. We also have Shawana's on tonight. We also have Octavius on tonight.
Yay!
We are yes. All right, so let's talk about it with Alice. Keep in mind, let's talk about it with Alice. It's about all about life conversations. It is all about being supportive. It is all about educational, as well as a platform for fun and just keeping you aware and update on some things that are going on. What's really going on? Of course, we do know what's going on with COVID. We'll talk a little bit about that for a few minutes. And also some other things that's going on. As you know, last week we had T. Mary on, but for some reason our information wasn't able to, really share. So, but we were glad about her sharing legacy as well. We don't own the rights to the music. So let's talk about it with Alice is live and we are ready to get started. Let's get started with the conversation as it relates to legacy. We want you to also share. Please share this because this is going to be a great segment tonight. Also, we'll be moving on, with other conversations that people feel that we should have. So again, this is Let's Talk About It with Alice, and we are ready to get the conversation started. So just briefly before we get to what's going on with COVID now, what's going on? They've got the new booster shot that's coming out, and wow. So what's your thoughts about that? Just for a few minutes, the booster. Not only the booster, but they've got another vaccine where you can get the vaccine if you've had COVID, I imagine, and then that'll help get rid of it quicker. So what's your thoughts about that? I heard some people saying they were going to buy into, some stock in this. People are buying stock, the vaccine. So any conversation on that briefly? What do you say?
well, it doesn't get rid of COVID. Can you hear me? So
Yes, very well.
so it doesn't get rid of COVID. It basically lessens the effects. I mean, look at Dancing with the Stars and the two people that ended up with, COVID. Both of them were vaccinated. So it doesn't get rid of it, but it definitely, one of the things the guy said was he know that he had COVID, before he even got the booster shot. And
Uh-huh.
so this next bout that he just received by getting COVID is not as bad as it was before he had the vaccine. So there's, I guess at the end of the day, I think the booster is challenging, obviously, because how you don't we still don't really know even the length of time that even the booster will cover for.
Mhm.
So this is like an open label experiment almost, but it's not a negative because they had to do this way back when the flu was back in the early 1900s, and they had to figure it out, until now is no longer, the Spanish flu is no longer a thing. And hopefully COVID will come to the same, conclusion. The challenge is you have a lot of people that aren't, really doing their part, with
Yes.
protection. And so that's the challenge we're facing. I think at the end of the day, yes, it's a personal decision, but, I think it's a responsible, decision as well to help us get on the other side of this. And me, I was the one pushing back hard. Um, even so much pushing, back on, the booster as well. But I understand the method to the madness, and it's not a negative madness. It's just a necessary thing that has to be done until they can get this thing, under control. But yeah,
We've got to get past it. We have got to get it under control, and the fighting going back and forth with the mask on, the mask off in the schools, and we got to move it. We got to push the needle forward, and so regardless, I understood that from years back when pandemics happened back in the 1800s, took them about 2 years to really get it under control. Fortunately, ours is not just one, um, you know, strand. We've got various ones that keep coming. So that's
and it's
something
going
to
to
talk
keep
about.
coming. It will continue down that path, unfortunately, until either enough people get the vaccine or enough antibodies are built up.
Yes,
Uh,
yes,
with or without the vaccine, you pray that you don't have to go the latter without, but at the end of the day, you got to get a herd immunity, and you got to get as many people, not just in this country, but around the world, vaccinated, and more of the vaccines getting to these other parts of the world that don't even have the vaccine. That's been the challenge, I think, as well. They're starting to, take it outside of the country, and many other countries are now finally doing it, and are getting it. But I think, that's what's really going on. There's so much other stuff. I mean, this thing is just heated, unfortunately. It's like
yes, it is.
it turns people angry. I mean, it's like just crazy nonsense, that
Yeah,
we're going through. But, unfortunately, this is where we are. And, you have to exercise wisdom, no matter what.
So,
hopefully that, go on, Octavius.
so my take on it is, and it'll kind of lend to what we're talking about today, education, right? Like
Yes,
everything goes back
yes,
to
yes.
education. So, like, let's deal with facts. Like, there are over 700,000 deaths, right, in America alone. Like, that's a real number. That's facts. So, even for the conspiracy theorists, and for those, of us, like myself, who really pushed back, and I was like, I'm just not sure of what we're getting, what we're taking, and what the results are, because at that time people were still who had the vaccine were still also dying also. So but the facts are 700,000 people have died, right, over that amount. And, I don't want to be personally responsible for anybody's death by
That's my thought.
not being responsible.
Yeah.
Well, whether it's wearing a mask, whether it's getting my vaccine, getting vaccinated, because I know personal examples, of people who've gone to funerals, or, a son has come home from, being out partying or whatever and stuff, and has, brought, COVID back to their home, and somebody's
Yes.
died from that. And you don't want to have
Yes.
to deal with that also. So, those are the things, I try to explain to people, not, get into the, tic tac arguments about, all the hype, but it's like, listen, man, at the end of the day, do you want to be responsible for somebody's death?
Yeah.
When it could have been a mask, it could have been vaccine, or, just keep your distance, so things that
Yes. Yes. Like, and we'll move forward from it. That a friend of mine said that her niece got it, and her niece brought it home, to her mom, and then the mom, and the grandmother lived in the home as well, and then the grandmother got it, and the grandmother ended up on the ventilator.
right.
Yeah.
And
So that's real.
it
That's
is,
right.
and to add to it is, it's a lot of young people. I mean, I think there are so many, um, you know, young people that are just feel like they're oblivious to it. I'm just amazed, at it. But it goes back to what Octavia said, and it's education. Education is key. I think a lot of people are, unfortunately getting educated, and we're on YouTube, as well, but, they're getting their education on YouTube and getting their education on Google and Wikipedia and wherever else they're getting it from, but I think, as many people as possible that can really help break down, the reason why, the importance of it, and what's going on behind the scenes, help people understand. It cracks me up when I hear different people say, I'm studying the data. They're not scientists, but they're studying the data. They're studying. And I'm like, do you really know what you're reading? Do you really
And one last fact, right? Like, ever since I've been born, and I'm 48, like we've had to have vaccinations to get in school. So
Exactly. Did
that's
anybody
facts.
study the data
Like,
on that? Did anybody study the data on that?
Terry, you're
Okay.
on. You're muted, Terry. You're muted, Terry.
I'm sorry. Los Angeles schools are gonna have to start doing that. I just saw that on a thing the other day.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
gonna have to have their cards and show that they've been vaccinated.
But
So
all
they're
I'm
getting ready
saying
to
is,
start that.
like without getting into, like I said, all the hoopla of it all, like, that's something we've always had to do. I've been in the military, we had to have, I mean, over your school vaccinations, 10
Right.
other different shots we had to have, just being in the military. So
Yeah.
like we've always had vaccination. I mean, at least in the US, as a part of, going to schools and being in public places and all these things. So, I, the thing is, like, these athletes, because they become role models, right? Once they, make millions and millions of dollars, they become role models to us all, especially our kids. But, now they're like, well, I'm not taking the. So what's going to happen is your total contract is going to be null and void because it's FDA regulated. It's going to be NBA, NFL, whatever league is in. It's going to be mandated. So even if your contract is guaranteed, you're not following the league's rules. So your contract will be null and void. So, these are the facts, right? Like that's going to happen. And,
Let me add this to it. When you're talking about facts, so and just being a pharmacist, for me, it's coming back to the numbers and to the data. So one of the things with traditional vaccines do not have as many patients in those clinical trials, although the long-term data, they would have, several years of data with utilizing these, with these products when they went into clinical trials before they were reviewed and approved.
Right.
Whereas what has happened in this scenario is, although we don't have the longevity of the data, which is what most people want to see, but you have the volume, you have the number of people, which is hundreds of millions of people that have taken the vaccine. And yes, there are side effects. There are some of but these are most are typical side effects, which is the normal for any vaccine. Even when you take your baby to get vaccinated, they're going to come up with a fever, chills, all sorts of stuff.
That's right.
Symptoms. So at the end of the day, the difference in the clinical trials that have happened now is because your numbers are so great that the chances of them seeing something is going to manifest if there's something that needs to be seen. And those things are being captured, and the CDC is reporting out on it as it pop up, like the cardiovascular things that was happening in the young people, the things that were happening with the younger women, with developing the different blood issues. So it's different things that have popped up. They're calculating it. The numbers are sparse, but they're starting to, capture that information. And but I think the risk and the benefit, that's what people have to weigh out when they're making a decision for their families.
Well, I just kind of think that what we also have to look at is that we have not been in a pandemic. This thing took us by storm. So you would not have the kind of data, that you ordinarily would when they're doing different research trials.
It goes back,
Just
Mom. So you actually have more data,
Now you do.
more people in a shorter period of time.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Now you do. Now
in
you
a
do.
shorter period of time. Exactly.
Right.
So now, normally you'd have to wait for the years to really get
Exactly.
to see something, whereas now, in a shorter period of time, you're actually really starting to be able to see. Now, obviously, long term, you'll start picking up things, but overall, because of the number of people, that have gotten it, I think they'll be able to see things a lot quicker than what it used
Yeah,
to be.
that is great.
Let's
I
talk
think
about
that
this
I
month.
have a question. I have a question. So if they really, really wanted to get rid of COVID, really, couldn't they have, just like they spray stuff over plants and stuff, they could have sprayed something in the air. They could send
nah.
airplanes around and spray that stuff and kill whatever germs.
No.
But it's money to be made.
That's
So
that's
for the pharmaceutical, it ties into money and then controlling population.
well, well,
That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
We
I
gotta move it.
I have to say I have to disagree on that, but I agree. We, let's talk about, if we can, before we go into education. This
Yes.
month, this month is breast cancer.
Breast Cancer
Yeah.
Awareness Month, and to
Yeah.
all those who are survivors, our heart goes out. We definitely will, have someone to come on and just talk about that briefly before the month is over, because I think it's very important. And it's not just women. There are a number of men
Mhm.
who have gotten breast cancer and even now have been diagnosed with breast cancer. So breast cancer awareness has spread.
That's why I got pink
To
nails.
say that next week we'll do the pink week.
That's why I got pink
To
nails.
represent. But I think it's great. I've got great friends. And then Shawana just lost a friend to that.
Yeah, today was
Young.
a rough day, but a great day, because
Yeah.
we laid to rest a dear sweetheart. She was 42, young, 42
Oh
years,
wow.
With
and
two daughters.
two daughters, married, two daughters, had breast cancer. But it didn't define her because she left. We're talking about legacy, and she left
I mean, really, when I heard about her today,
heck of a
I was
legacy.
listening to it online.
Yeah,
Powerful. What a
yeah,
legacy. What a legacy. It was the life that she lived. And her love for God was, I mean, people from childhood all the way up. She was just a special young lady who was most powerful. Not only that, knew work flowed in her destiny,
oh
knew her
yeah,
purpose and call of God. It was just, that's to me, that's legacy. And the legacy that she's leaving for those two daughters, powerful.
it's so
I didn't
powerful.
realize she was such technology and
Right.
oh my gosh, she was
I read her
brilliant.
obituary.
She was just
Beauty,
brilliant.
brains, passion for the things of God. I mean, she was like this incredible package. One of the things Rick always said, Rick Pena, from like years, he's been saying this: find, follow, and fulfill your purpose. And when I tell you this chick found, she followed, and she fulfilled her purpose, and she has impacted so many of us. Her legacy lives on for being a worshiper, being full of faith all the way to the end, and that,
Faithful unto death.
and passing that on. It was a great celebration,
But it
today.
was also encouraging to those who breast cancer survivors that you can live your full life purposefully. And that to me was so important. I see that Dr. Michelle have something in the comments. Who has it? Who's taking up the comments?
And I could say
Yeah.
this also about Shima. One of the things that she did, if you want to, you can go get her books off of Amazon.
Wow.
I'll just put it in our Facebook chat. It's Tashima Robinson. She wrote 3 children's books, and she wrote these last year while she was
Yeah.
going through all of this,
Wow.
and left a legacy. I started reading these to my grandchildren, and so even in her, passing away and going to the next life, she still live on, and so it's just
Legacy.
yeah, she left a tremendous. So we're talking about legacy. Shima left an amazing legacy, and it challenges all of us to say, what will I be remembered
Something.
for? What is my
Yes.
legacy? What am I imparting into people?
Yes.
What am I imparting into my children and my family and those that I come in contact with? I think at the end of the day, we all should be moved by and trying to figure out, what is it? Why am I here? And how do I impact the people that are in my life?
Yes, that's why I say that her influence was from elementary school, kindergarten, I think I heard, all the way up.
Yeah.
And she just kept building and kept moving up. And I think that legacy does speaks of our character, it speaks of who we are, and it speaks of the things that we do, not so much for ourselves, but what we do for others, what we leave for others to remember, those the great things. And so that's all I kept hearing, and I thought it was powerful. But more importantly, as we're talking about legacy, let's move to bam. Let's
Real
go to
talk.
Octavius.
Yeah.
Octavius, there was some information that you sent to us. And so we want you to share that about legacy and just keep on, building, just kind of a crescendo of how you see it. All right, go for it, Octavius. And then we're coming back and there are questions in the comments. So we will address those. Sister Michelle, we got you.
So, we've been talking about legacy, and we were trying to decide, hey, what we want to talk about next. Of course, as building on legacy. So, we were talking about finance, we were talking about, family history and all these different things. But, education, I thought was the building block, right? Because without education, we really can't delve into finances. Without education, we can't research our, family history. So all of that, evolves around education. And, when it comes to education, we, always get hit with the, poor legacy on that end. And, I've always, kind of like, I don't get that because, if you look at it historically, we've always progressed, over time. When I say we, I'm talking about, African Americans, right? When we were allowed to, right? Because, before, education is important because, hey, we could not have education. We could not possess education. We could not go out and learn. We weren't allowed to do those things, period, right? As slave, as cattle, as, as property. Right. And we weren't able to do those things, for certain reasons, right? Because if you become educated, hey, you become knowledgeable what they're doing to you. You become educated, you become, knowledgeable of the economic system that, you're not thriving in. If you become educated, you understand, and now you want to do something about what's being done to you, right? So that's why education is so important. And when we start with education, there's a couple myths that stick out there that we always say. Like, hey, there are more Black men in prison than there are in college, right?
We used to believe that.
Huh?
I said we used to believe that because
Right.
that's what we heard all the time.
Right. So what's important about that is if we believe that, right? If we're telling young men that, if we're telling young women that, what's their outlook?
Depression.
We're feeding them, we talk about mental health, we talk about all these different things, we talk about financial literacy, but if we're feeding them that, it's like my horizon or my outlook becomes very bleak, so I'm just destined for prison. Is that what you're saying? So in 2011, there was a professor out of Howard. And he was like, I just don't believe those. Like, let me go to the numbers. Let me go to get reports. Let me go figure it out. So in 2011, statistics, these are facts. 1.3 million Black men were in college. 840,000 were in prison, right? So in 2015, that number was 1.4 million in college and 745,000 were in prison, which meaning the ratio to college versus prison, college was going up, increasing, and prison was going down. Meaning with more education, right, there's a direct correlation between being uneducated and poverty, right? So when we talk about education, it's not, or especially Black men, or just in general Black people. The reasons that we get into crime, the reasons that we get into, mischief, all these things. It's poverty. Poverty. Not even being uneducated, it's poverty. When you're hungry, when you can't eat, when you don't have a place to stay, you will resort to anything to fix that problem, right? And a lot of times, most times, it's going to be something criminal or a criminal activity, right? I'll go steal to feed my family, right? I'll go do, things that are not necessarily right to make sure, everybody is okay.
You remember
So,
the
but,
Chinese proverb where it says, "Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a
A
lifetime."
lifetime.
And to me, that's what goes with education. That's why it's so important, where when there's an opportunity to, it was for so long, the African American community did not get the same resources, the same funding, all of these things that are needed in order to help propel, the children forward. I mean, and it was such a vicious cycle that happened in the 60s and the 70s and even before that, that it just carried over even into the early 2000s and into 2000 in some of our communities. And so to me, at the end of the day, if there's something that we can do to just turn that around, to your point, the numbers will change. Prison numbers are going to go down. All this other crazy stuff that's going on in these different communities will go down, and you will see education go up, and you'll see more and more people being more productive in society. So I think that Chinese proverbs really speak to exactly what you're talking about.
and I think that, what we're looking at now, a whole host of, and I would say maybe one or two generations as it relates to, I always have to go back to this, teen moms, teen parenting have no skills, no anything, no education in terms of, helping their children to thrive and all of these kinds of things. So it's just a conglomerate of things that has contributed to negative behavior. Even with the research study that came out, and this was some years ago when I was doing a lot of work in the housing, projects in Atlanta with parents. The research study came out that children that are faith-based are less likely to become involved in violent crimes and things like this, less likely than said that they would, but less likely, giving them, I guess, maybe some hope but that they have a foundation that would keep them grounded to make those kinds of decisions that, I don't want to do this. And I'm not saying that is what it's all about. That's the whole thing. But what I'm saying, there's a lot of things that contributes to a lot of what's happening now. And then this get rich thing where young people, remember back, I think maybe after you guys, came out of school and the next generation came along, and parents, shifting their focus and shifting the things that, that they're imparting into their children, that they got to keep up with this one, and they'll, take their monies and they'll go and buy this and they'll do that. And then the children in school will remember they were still taking things from children, still in their tennis shoes and all that. So
Right.
it just gotten progressively worse. And so we got to go back to, even going back to what you said, your mom. I would love to hear that, what you said about what your mom taught you, Octavius, about school and what she taught you. She wanted to go to school and then she wasn't able to go to school, but she ensured you guys. Talk
Okay.
about that.
I will. So before I share that, another myth is single mothers are to blame for problems of, Black students, right? So that's a myth, right? Because there's no data that suggests that that's true, right? But
Right.
what it suggests is that
Yeah, I agree with that.
more single mothers, right, uneducated single mothers,
Have done a great
will
job.
be living in poverty, right? So if you're living in poverty, then you're more susceptible to crime. You're more susceptible to just things
Right.
happening that wouldn't normally happen if you're,
Mhm.
not in those situations.
Yes.
So it's the poverty. It's not being a single mother. I come from a single mother, right? And my story
I
to
did
you
too.
guys,
I did too.
my story to you guys was that, hey, my mother had me at a very young age. She had me at 18, right? And it was, she got pregnant at 17 and had me at 18. And she wanted to go to college. Obviously, had ideas. And back in the 70s, African American teens were being very progressive and going to these HBCUs and all these things, and hey, want to reach their aspirations. But she decided, hey, I won't be able to afford to go. I have to have my child, and we're gonna take care of this baby. So she would end up going, on to nursing school and everything. But for her, because she was not able to go to college, education was paramount in our household, right? Like I couldn't do anything if I brought a C, if I brought a D or F, everything was gone, right?
That's right.
Like extracurricular activities, football, basketball, baseball,
Gone.
anything, it was done. Like there was no other option, right? You were gonna suffer and you were gonna suffer at home. And
Right.
so for me and my sister, education was just paramount. So we always had to do well in school. Like I never saw my mom get upset unless I got a bad grade or something. Like for real. Like it was all about education with her. And like I said, my dad wasn't around, but up until 7, even with him, education was paramount because he didn't graduate from, high school. Right. So they always felt like, hey, education is at least is a pathway to somewhere better than what we have right now. And they were absolutely correct.
I was the first one in our family to graduate from high school
Wow.
I was going to look at the,
and college. Yeah,
that's true.
first one.
I was going to say, look at the legacy though. Although you had a dad that didn't graduate out of high school and you had a mom that didn't make it out of college, look at, you and Olga and your children and Olga's daughter. I mean, look at what you're doing and you're breaking these
That's
cycles.
legacy breaking cycle.
Mom was the first one to get, her degree as well. And she instilled that in us. And so now look at what's happening even in our family and
Yeah,
children. And now they're going on, Terry's daughter going on getting her
you
master's.
have your doctorate. Derek has his master's. So
It's like we're breaking through those different cycles and then we're pushing it down even further. Like Terry, she has her grandchildren.
Right.
And she's pushing that inside of them, and they have someone they got their aunts and different ones to look at, to say, okay, I can do this. I don't have to settle, even though I may not come from a background where I have all the money or my family has money, but they did it, and so I can do it. And I think that is, really giving these children something to look towards is really helping, and it helps break those cycles.
yeah,
And I want to be crystal clear. Like everybody is not college material, right?
exactly. I was getting ready.
I'm not saying like, hey, college is the end all be all. That's not what I'm saying. I don't want to turn anybody off by saying, hey, if you don't do this, then you're gonna be a failure. No, that's not what I'm saying. But all I'm saying is education in its purest form, right? Meaning like you can learn anything you want to learn, right? You can learn to be a landscaper. You can learn to be a plumber. You can learn to be an electrician. There are so many different things that you can do to create income, create wealth, create stability, break that vicious cycle of poverty, and all those different things. But to me, it's like people get it confused. Like if I don't go to college, I failed. No, that's not it, right? There are other means of education. But my thing is, you have to educate yourself, though. No matter what
You
it
know
is.
what? You got to have a desire.
Right.
And that's what that is. You got to have a drive. You got to have a desire. You got to have encouragement. You got to have, those that would challenge you. Because my sister, who did not go to college, who did not finish high school, was my greatest inspiration,
Absolutely.
pushing me to do better. But the way she lived, you would have thought that she went to college because she lived in all of the best places, had the best thing. And I always, admired that. So when I graduated from high school, I went to a trade school. I went and became an LPN that's where, because I've always wanted to be a secretary and a nurse. I exceeded the both. I, achieved all of that and
Right.
then continued to go on. So I'm saying no. And I say to young people, even now, even if you don't choose college, choose, a trade school, get something with your hands, something that, you can do, or choose military if
Right.
that's the other option, because everybody, like you said, are not college material. And what they're learning now is, you can't push every child to go, and some just, fell out, but that's not even their desire. They're going because someone has told them. But if their
Right.
desire is to become, like a young man said to me not long ago, he said that he didn't want to go to school.
Right.
He said that he said he does landscaping. I said, do you enjoy landscaping? And he said he did. And I said, well, if you enjoy landscaping, why don't you start your own landscaping business? You can start with, one lawnmower and get a couple of people. And I said, and that's how businesses are growing. I said, a lot of college graduates now own lawn service
Yeah,
businesses.
you're right.
They went
Right.
to college, but now they own their own lawn service. I said, so that's not bad, but do something. It's gotta, if that's your passion, that's your drive, that's your desire, do that. So that's what I say to young people. What's your passion? What's your desire? Then I believe that people do a very good job at what they're passionate about.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We have a couple of comments from Chilia. She said, being a student of life. And then
Yes.
Michelle, she said, you have to learn something new every day to
Yes,
mind. Absolutely.
that's so good.
So there's a quote, right? When you stop learning, you die. And that's
Ah,
you know what I mean?
Ooh.
So we were at a men's retreat, and it was just, older men, I probably was the youngest guy there. But, I learned so much from talking to them, because obviously my son, he's in college now, and I'm dealing with him, trying to become a man, but still acting like a child, doing, childish, crazy stuff, right? But, one great, piece of advice this guy gave to me, he was like, if I could do it all over again, I would teach my children differently. And he said, what he meant by that is like, what I realized at the end of the day, each of my children, he had 3 sons, he was like, they learn differently.
Yeah.
Like, for each of them, but he was like, because of the way I was raised, and it was just like, hey, I'm just gonna beat you until you get it right. You know what I mean? Like if you do wrong, I'm just gonna whoop you, right? But for some, it's, hey, a subtle gesture of love. Like, hey, I get it, I understand. Hey, you failed at this, but this is how we do this. For some, it's tough love. You have to go out there. All right, we're going out there. We about to go do a couple laps. We're gonna do some push-ups, because that's the way they learn, right? And then for some, it's like you have to put them in a situation, where they'll thrive. Meaning, like, I'm not an artist, but my kids love art. So guess what? Maybe I need to go find them an art teacher or art mentor, somebody who does that. So they'll thrive. And so I think we have to parent differently now. And we can, because we have those resources, right? And we have our community and our
I certainly
network
agree with that.
where we can, do things.
Yeah, there is another quote by Dr. Miles Monroe. You were born an original, why die a copy?
Right.
You were born an original. Everybody is born an original.
Right.
Everybody have a path. When you find it, he said, walk therein. And once we find and really discover what our purpose, our real meaning for being here, then we can walk in our destiny and walk our purpose out. Yeah.
And I think as parents, we have to understand that there's a standard, right? Like there's a standard. Like, and we probably gonna get into some things about this, but like I hate to see young men sagging. Like that's a no-no, right? Like I that's a real
been around too
turn
long.
off. And I've told my daughters, I was like, listen, I'm really simple. But I said, you bring a young man here and he's sagging, I said, it's going to be a discussion and you might not like it. Right.
That's good.
I said, but what I'm telling you is, as my daughter, there's a standard, right? You never see me sagging. There's nothing fashion about that. somebody is showing you their underwear. That's disrespectful.
Right.
Not only to men, but to women. And if you go back and you get into the prison myths.
The real thing about it, all right.
It means something in slavery, because that was, the master breaking the slave. So listen, it won't happen. But I say all that to say, like, we as parents also, I think we're lowering the standard so much.
There you go.
Right? So we can't, we want our kids to be creative. We want our kids to be able to communicate with us, right? Because we've gotten away from spankings. We've gotten away from that tough love, but we're also lowering the standards so much that I think it's detrimental to us as a community. It's detrimental to our young men, our young women, and we see it every day.
And it messes up our young people character. There's no character standards in that. Okay.
And with that, we have to wrap
It's
it up.
so good.
Oh, good.
We have to wrap it up. We're going to bring this, keep talking about this
Next
because
week.
it's so important, but I want to wrap it up with some of the comments that people said, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do next week, and then we will let you guys go. So when we were talking about the vaccine, so I'll go back. Dr. Michelle Webb was on, and she gave some different points. So I'm going to read those. She said the booster will increase immunity and resistance, but the way to move forward and conquer the virus is vaccination. She also said we've been vaccinated all our lives, so from 6 weeks old, kindergarten, first grade, college requires this. So what is the issue? This is a public health crisis, and the mandate is constitutional because of the national and global effects of COVID. She also said, back to facts, 1.2 million people total to date have died from COVID.
It's an uncertain time, so create a level of certainty for
Had
your
a
body.
vaccine, and now 600,000 or more, and mainly unvaccinated people. And she said, I had someone say that on Friday, I'm healthy and did my research. I'll take my chances with COVID as opposed to the side effects of the shot. She said, sorry, death is not a side effect. It's final. She said, think about it. And then she also said messenger RNA is not new technology. It's this first time it's been utilized to mass produce the vaccine. That's absolutely correct. It's been around for about 20 years, 20 plus years now. But again, this was massive in its use of it. But it was innovative for them to actually be able to do something of this magnitude. And probably the last thing that was said is she said, whatever you do, be your best and show excellence in all you do. Debbie DeFire out of the UK. Hey, Debbie. She said communities need to be more involved with our youth. And then Dr. Michelle Webb said, God created each of us. We were given gifts and talents that make us unique. We need to develop those gifts and uncover our purpose. So with that, we just want to wrap up. Let's talk about it. This was such an awesome conversation, and it will continue. Legacy, there's so much to it. So many different.
Yeah. And I just want to send a shout out to Debbie over in the UK, my good friend over in London. And so look her up. She's a reggae singer, just powerful.
Yes,
so do look Debbie up. She's awesome, powerful. Listen, this has been Let's Talk About It with Alice. I want to thank everybody who's been on this afternoon, who had a chance to, make comments. Octavius, you were great. You posed a great conversation, and I love it. And I think that, just talking about this again, because I think we do need to move to that point, of talking about what's really going on. What can we do? How can we, spread the word? Let's have this conversation, because it's a kind of conversation that need to be had and need to be talked about if we're going to talk about legacy at all. What we want to do is to change the paradigm. I think we need to change that, because we have great young people, creative young people who are really, really powerful. And I think that, just being able to have these conversations, and parents can go back, and, aunts, uncles, everybody can go back. And if you're there and you want to come on, let's talk about it with Alice. If you have a conversation, put it in the comments. Please share this again. We say to you, love, peace, and increase to you, because this is a platform for family, for everyone. Yeah, we kind of started out just women, but we're talking about building a strong family here now,
That's right.
changing our community. So we cannot do this without being inclusive of the entire family. So I want to thank Octavius for coming on tonight. I want
All right,
and
thanks for having me.
who will be on. Thank you, Shawana.
Got pulled in.
You just got pulled in, and
I
we're
love
loving it. We're loving
I
it. So
do.
let's send this out to your friends,
Yes.
cousins, everybody. Great following is going on, and we were really looking at the stats, and it's really great. People are joining, to become part of Let's Talk About It. So we're excited about it. I think it's going somewhere, and I think that as we continue to elevate and press in, we will definitely have a chance to make a difference because it is a catalyst for change.
That's
All
it.
right?
One last plug for Debbie DeFire. She has a song that came out. It's called Where Do I Go From Here?
Wow.
Debbie DeFire. So go follow her. Debbie is Debbie. DeFire is Defire. So follow her. She's on Instagram. Also, you can get her music, but it's awesome. She's a great reggae artist.
Yes, I can't wait to get back to London. I had a chance to stay over there with her. But it's just a great time. And I thank all of you for logging on, supporting us, continue to support, continue to share. And if you want a conversation, then we can have a conversation also. And it is supportive, it is fun. And not only that, it is educational. You tonight was educational. Octavius gave us a really good education as it relates to the stats. And I love that. Is it a myth or is it a fact? All right.
Right.
So we want to say to you, good night, love,
Peace.
And
and
increase.
increase. We say